She saw the warning signs and begged them to listen. But Seascape's management silenced every concern, choosing profit over safety, illusion over truth. Lisa Westbrook stood alone, trying to protect the Orca she loved and the life she was about to lose. But just wait until you hear how this story spiraled into tragedy, and why, in the end, justice found its voice. Lisa Westbrook's fascination with the ocean wasn't just a childhood phase, it was a calling. Growing up along the misty coastline of Oregon, she spent more time with tide pools than with people. While other kids chased summer camps and cartoons, Lisa would sit on the living room floor, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide as the glowing shapes of orcas glided across the screen in underwater documentaries. She wasn't just captivated, she was connected. There was something about these massive, intelligent beings that spoke to her in a way nothing else did. The way they moved, silent yet commanding. The way their eyes seemed to hold centuries of knowledge. Lisa didn't want to just study them. She wanted to stand beside them, to earn their trust, to speak their language. Years later, that dream guided every decision she made. She majored in marine biology, graduated top of her class, and endured one of the toughest aquatic training programs in the country, a program known for pushing candidates to their physical and emotional limits. While others dropped out, Lisa endured. Not out of ego, but out of sheer, unwavering purpose. At 28, she was offered a position that many could only hope for: full-time Orca trainer at Seascape Marine Park in Florida, a facility known for its high-profile shows, and more privately, its demanding reputation. But what made her new role truly extraordinary and challenging was her assignment to Nyros. Nyros wasn't just any orca. He was the park's crown jewel. Towering in presence, striking in size and color, Nyros was the headliner, the face of Seascape's brand. His image was plastered across billboards, souvenir mugs, and family vacation brochures. The audience loved him, the staff respected him, and quietly feared him. He was brilliant, yes, capable of stunning precision during performances, but he was also volatile. Trainers whispered about unpredictable moments, unexplained reactions, and a gaze that seemed to shift from playful to distant without warning. Still, when Lisa was introduced as his new lead handler, the media spun it as a storybook match. The rising star meets the ocean's legend. To the public, it was a feel-good tale of ambition meeting opportunity. A young woman realizing her dream in a dazzling aquatic world. But behind closed doors, something else stirred. Even in those early days, there were signals, subtle, easily overlooked, that the waters Lisa stepped into weren't just deep, they were dangerous. In the artificial blue of the Seascape tanks, something rare unfolded, something that couldn't be trained or choreographed. Over the span of 2 years, Lisa Westbrook and Nyros developed a connection that many described as extraordinary. Trainers said he was calmer around her, more attentive. Even visitors noticed it, the way Nyros would drift closer when Lisa entered the enclosure, how he seemed to pause, waiting for her signal, not out of habit, but choice. He responded to her voice, her presence, even her silence. Their routines became seamless, almost graceful. During shows, Nyros would twist through the water alongside her like a synchronized swimmer. He never missed a cue, never hesitated. To the cheering crowds, it looked like magic, a perfect partnership between human and orca, built on trust and respect. But behind the curtain of applause, Lisa's bond with Nyros went deeper than the spectacle. She spent countless hours with him outside performance times. Sometimes she sat beside the tank for half the night, watching him in the low light. She whispered through the glass, hummed to him, even sang lullabies, not for effect, but instinct. For her, Nyros wasn't a showpiece. He was a sentient being, one who was trying, in his own way, to communicate something no one else was hearing. And Lisa was listening. She started to notice the signs. His behavior was changing. At first it was subtle, longer pauses before responding, reduced energy during rehearsals. Then, more worrying patterns appeared. Nyros began wearing down his teeth, gnawing at the steel gates that separated his tanks. His dorsal fin, once tall and curved, had started to collapse. There were days when he would float in place, unmoving, eyes unfocused, ignoring even Lisa's presence. He was there, but not. Lisa knew these weren't just quirks of behavior. They were red flags. She began keeping a private log, not out of fear, not yet, but out of responsibility. She filmed certain sessions discreetly. She tracked how often he refused to eat or drifted to the same corners of the tank. It was her way of trying to understand, to decipher the message behind his silence. And then she began to speak up. Lisa submitted quiet, measured reports to Seascape leadership. She didn't make accusations. She asked questions. She suggested Nyros be rotated out of shows for a short rest period, that his behavior be reviewed by a specialist. Her emails were calm, professional, but the urgency was there between the lines. In one internal memo, she wrote, "He's telling us something, and we're not listening." The reply was polite, non-committal. "Duly noted," one manager wrote. "Let's monitor and reassess after summer." For Lisa, that wasn't enough, but she couldn't force change alone. So she stayed, kept working, kept watching, and kept hoping she was wrong. By the beginning of 2023, something inside Nyros had shifted. And this time, Lisa wasn't the only one who noticed. Commands that once felt like second nature were now met with hesitation, or worse, complete indifference. He would drift away mid-session, sometimes circling the far end of the pool, instead of responding. Other times, he'd approach trainers only to veer off at the last moment, as if suddenly changing his mind. For a marine mammal known for precision and consistency, this erratic behavior was deeply unsettling. What concerned Lisa even more was his withdrawal. There were days Nyros wouldn't interact at all. He'd hover near the filtration grate or float motionless at the surface, eyes unfocused, ignoring even the sounds he once responded to eagerly. He began skipping meals, ignoring toys, reacting late, or not at all, to stimuli. It wasn't rebellion, it wasn't mood, it was a pattern, and it was getting worse. Then came the moment that confirmed Lisa's fears. During a private training session, as she worked with him on a standard maneuver, Nyros suddenly turned, accelerated, and rammed into one of the floating plastic barrels used for target drills. The impact was explosive. The barrel split open in a single blow, fragments scattering across the tank. The sound echoed off the walls like a firecracker. Lisa didn't move, not out of fear, out of shock. She had seen Nyros act impulsively before, but never with this kind of focused aggression. It wasn't a random outburst. It was deliberate, controlled, and it had nothing to do with play. That night, she didn't sleep. She spent hours reviewing footage, replaying moments frame by frame. She compiled her logs, cross-referenced past entries. It was all there, a gradual decline that now teetered on a knife's edge. Lisa submitted her findings the next morning. Her tone was direct, yet careful. She requested an immediate behavioral review and recommended Nyros be temporarily removed from public performances. She included timestamps, video stills, data points. She waited. The response came in a brief meeting with management. "He's being moody. Orcas go through phases. He'll stabilize." Another added, "He trusts you, Lisa. Just keep him steady until summer break. Then we'll talk." Lisa left that meeting with a quiet, sinking certainty. The trust they spoke of wasn't between her and Nyros. It was what the park placed in her ability to keep the illusion alive, to maintain control, no matter what was actually happening in the water. She was no longer just a trainer. She had become a buffer between a stressed animal and a business that couldn't afford disruption. Alone in the locker room that evening, Lisa made a decision, not out of defiance, but necessity. She stitched a tiny GoPro camera into the seam of her wetsuit, a waterproof eye that would always be watching, recording every session, every shift in behavior, every moment no one else would acknowledge. She told no one, not of her closest coworkers, not even her family, because Lisa wasn't preparing for a public scandal. She was preparing for the possibility that one day she might need to explain something that couldn't be put into words, something she could no longer ignore. The water had changed. The silence was different now, not peaceful, not empty, but heavy, like something waiting to break. June 18th, 2023. Father's Day at Seascape Marine Park. The stands were full. Families filled the rows with popcorn and sun hats, children clutching souvenir plush toys shaped like Nyros. The afternoon show had been heavily promoted, a celebration of strength, connection, and the bond between man and nature. It was one of the park's busiest days of the year. Lisa Westbrook wasn't supposed to be part of the performance. In fact, just 3 days earlier, she had submitted a formal request to be removed from all water-based interactions with Nyros for the remainder of the month. Her reasoning was clear: increased behavioral instability, unresolved internal reports, and personal safety concerns. The request was declined. No further explanation was offered. So, that afternoon, Lisa stood behind the gate leading into the main pool arena, adjusting her wetsuit in silence. Behind her, music played over loudspeakers, upbeat, cheerful. In front of her, thousands of eyes waited to be entertained. She took one steadying breath, pushed her fear down as far as it would go, and walked out smiling. Nyros was already in the water, floating motionless at center stage. His massive form bobbed in rhythm with the filtered currents. His fins were still. His head was slightly lowered. From above, he looked calm, elegant even. But Lisa knew better. She saw it the moment their eyes met. There was no recognition. The show began. The first 10 minutes went exactly as planned. Lisa signaled the start of the routine. Nyros followed, slowly at first, then with practiced ease. He completed a circle spin. He retrieved a float. He performed 2 short breaches, spraying water over the laughing front rows. But something was missing. Lisa could feel it. His timing was off. His responses came a second too late. His body language was dulled, as if he were swimming through something thicker than water. Still, she pressed on. The crowd didn't notice. From the outside, it looked like a normal, even beautiful performance. Then came the final act. The deep dive spin was always a showstopper, a precisely timed underwater twist that ended with Lisa launching out of the water on Nyros' rostrum, arms raised triumphantly. They had done it hundreds of times. Lisa raised her arm for the signal. Nyros didn't move. She repeated the cue, more firmly. He remained still, and then, without warning, without any prelude or shift, he surged. The water split as Nyros shot upward, his full mass moving with stunning speed. In a blur, he reached Lisa, turned sideways, and clamped his jaws around her torso. A sharp splash echoed through the stadium. The crowd gasped, unsure if it was part of the act. Then Lisa was gone. Submerged in an instant, pulled down by the full force of an animal she had once called her partner. The tank exploded into chaos. Waves crashed against the acrylic walls. Guests began screaming. Children cried. Phones came out. Some filmed. Others dropped theirs in shock. Seascape staff rushed to the edge of the pool, deploying emergency protocols. Metal poles were slammed against the tank. Underwater alarms triggered. Loud frequencies designed to interrupt or confuse marine animals. Nets were readied. But the pool remained still. Seconds passed, then minutes, and Lisa Westbrook never came back up. The headlines came quickly. Marine tragedy at Seascape. Beloved Orca turns deadly during family show. Trainer lost in freak accident. Seascape Marine Park responded with practiced precision. Their official statement called it a rare and deeply tragic incident, expressing their profound sorrow for the loss of a valued team member. They assured the public that internal reviews were underway and that safety protocols were being evaluated. The narrative was controlled, calm, polished. Behind the scenes, however, another story was unfolding, one that would never be printed in brochures or featured in press conferences. In the days following the incident, several employees noticed changes within the system. Internal drives were suddenly locked. Access logs were restricted. Memos related to Neros's past behavioral assessments quietly disappeared. Lisa's name was removed from certain performance documentation. Her desk was cleared overnight. And the GoPro, the small device she had sewn into her wetsuit, was never seen again. According to 2 technicians, park management confiscated it before the investigation began. No one knows what was on it. No footage was released. No reference to it was made in the final report. Soon after, whispers began circulating among the staff. Former trainers speaking anonymously revealed that Neros had a history of erratic behavior, and that Lisa wasn't the first to raise concerns. 3 prior incidents involving sudden contact, not outright attacks, but breaches of safety, had gone unreported to external safety auditors. One involved Neros aggressively blocking a diver's exit path for over 2 minutes. Another included a sudden thrash during feeding, narrowly avoiding injury. Each time the decision had been made internally. No need to escalate. One former employee later claimed that during a closed meeting, an executive dismissed concerns by saying, "As long as he doesn't do something on a live stream, we can manage the fallout." In the wake of Lisa's death, her family sought answers. They demanded access to her reports, private logs, communications. Their legal team filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Seascape, alleging negligence and suppression of critical safety information. The case never went to trial. Instead, it was resolved behind closed doors, a confidential settlement, a non-disclosure agreement, and a single-page press release citing mutual resolution. The monetary amount was never made public. And Neros, he was placed under a 2-month isolation protocol. During that time, he remained in a holding pool, monitored, fed, and kept from view. Seascape stated the purpose was to ensure his well-being and assess his future interactions. But soon after the summer season resumed, Neros was quietly reintroduced into the main tank, this time under the care of a different trainer. No public announcement was made. No ceremony marked his return. The music resumed, the shows continued, and the silence deepened. Lisa Westbrook's death was not simply a tragedy. It was a rupture, a quiet explosion that revealed the uncomfortable truth behind a carefully constructed illusion. To many, she was a young, hopeful trainer whose life was cut short in a tragic accident. But to those who truly understood her work and the world she lived in, Lisa's story was something more. It was the story of a professional who saw the signs, who raised her voice in a place where silence was safer, who fought for the well-being of another creature, even as the system around her prioritized schedules, appearances, and revenue. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't unprepared. She was the last person standing between a sentient being in distress and an industry unwilling to look beyond the performance. And in the end, she was left alone with the consequences. The truth is, Lisa wasn't the only victim. So was Neros. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't wild or dangerous by nature. He was intelligent, emotionally aware, and trapped for years in a space too small, a life too unnatural, a routine too rigid. He had no pod, no ocean, no choice. His days were scripted. His nights were silent. And eventually something inside him gave way. What happened on that stage was not a calculated act of harm. It was the result of years of suppression. A moment that perhaps wasn't about violence, but about breaking. Lisa understood that. She had always seen the deeper pain behind his eyes. That's why she stayed. That's why she tried. And that's why her loss resonates so far beyond the walls of that arena. Because this isn't just a story about one woman or one Orca. It's about a system, polished, marketable, and built to look harmless, that keeps running, even when it's hurting those inside it. The music plays, the shows continue, new trainers take the stage. But something remains echoing beneath the surface. A question, a warning, a voice, Lisa's voice. And until the tanks are empty, until the silence is no longer forced but peaceful, her voice will rise with every splash, whispering a truth many still choose not to hear. We were never meant to turn suffering into a spectacle,